People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who'll love me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 77 of the Secondary Heroes podcast. This week, we talk about the best friends, and we dive deep in what an actual best friend is. This is your host, Trevor, and joining me as usual is...
Hey, guys, it's Frog.
This is Josh.
And still lacking in sleep, this is DeLorean Wolfgang.
Sleep.
How do you
Yeah,
sleep when it's like 115 degrees, regardless if you have a new baby or not?
Yeah, guess what? I'm that jerk in California who runs his air conditioning all day long.
You have air conditioning? Very nice.
Wow.
Well, see, instead
You
of
have
the
electricity?
baby waking me up. There you go.
I'm avoiding fires and using my air conditioning.
What I was going to say is that you have the baby waking you up crying. I have myself waking myself up crying. So that's me. Yeah.
Every
It's pretty
week
bad.
you just sound sadder
Do
and sadder.
we need to talk, Prog?
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
do you own a couch that you can sit on and we'll just talk to you, man?
Aw, like a
You just
best
open up to
friend.
us.
Like a
Let
best
me
Tell you
friend.
about my best friend.
That was a great rendition. Thank you for sending that to us today, sir. That was very nice. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it was hot here this weekend, as you may know, and I know it's probably hot still today, but we wanted to come here and talk about best friends and what it means and best friends in pop culture because it won our poll. So thank you, everyone who is voting online. In our
Oh
poll.
yeah.
That
This
really
was a poll, right?
It was.
To do this. To do the best friends.
Twitter.com/secondary heroes.
It's on that www.twitter.com.
The Twitter. But yes, this won the poll, so it'd be kind of fun to talk about this.
Awesome. Best friends in film. But we're going to do an even deeper what were you saying, Trevor, about what we're doing? This is not going to be just a list of movies.
Yeah, we're
gonna
not just going to say, oh, hey, these guys were best friends. You remember that?
Hey, remember that movie? Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, we're going to go into diving deep into what it means to be a best friend. Like the idea, if you consider somebody your best friend, but they don't consider you their best friend, are you actually best friends? Who knows? That's what we're going to get into. Or like directors and writers trying to convey their past best friend relationships onto the characters that they're conveying to us, and then try a whole psychological identification with the audience so they can feel what that character feels when there's loss and pain in the thing depicted. It's a whole thing.
So
Or how about
listen to this with
toxic?
your best friend? Listen to what your best friend, so y'all could have this conflict resolution to make sure y'all are actually best friends.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Holy mackerel.
Very nice. That was a little.
This is
deeper
our
than I thought we were
secondary
gonna go.
look at best friends.
Nice. There you go.
Cool.
Well,
So where do we want to start with all of this?
yeah, Trevor, what do you want to discuss with the actual the framework of what it means to be a friend?
I think it's if we all identify one best friendship, and then you can figure out what makes them best friends. And then you find out maybe who's the best friends ever in pop culture.
Oh my. So
Oh,
this is going to be a
wait.
competition.
Is this a bracket now?
I don't know.
Bracket.
We're letting it ride.
Man, I did not come ready to fight today, but I will for best friends.
Oh, I came up with terrible best friends just to show you how broken and toxic a best friend relationship can be.
It
Well, and
can
that's
be.
the thing with a lot of these movies is most of the time
TV shows.
and TV shows, most of the time the best friend whole thing is like, it's like, oh wow, I am so sorry, my brain is just totally shutting down on me.
Babies will do that
It
to you.
happens.
You know what, I'll let you guys start then. Wow, I gotta
I
step back
will
a second.
say that sometimes a best friend relationship can become codependent, and sometimes there's some needs that one person has, and one reciprocates and probably shouldn't. So I think that'd be interesting to kind of look at.
And then there's like parasitic relationships or symbiotic relationships.
Yep. So yeah, look at Alex is like slinking
Sorry.
back, man. He's like,
Oh, I
a
feel
big
like
brain fart.
it was a horrible brain fart, but
Okay.
but it's interesting in film and TV shows that you know, a lot of best friends, let's just say male and female best friends, it always not always, but most of the time they end up becoming a romantic partner.
Sure.
Or like Harry Met Sally, they end up, you know, they start as not so much friends, but they end up becoming best friends, and then they end up becoming romantic together. And that's what it seems like if you look at the whole male female aspect of best friends. Most movies like to go the romantic way.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
funny,
it's
I
almost,
wasn't even thinking that.
Yeah,
when I
movies
was
and TV
coming up with my
also
stuff.
really create the societal norms that we have of how you then interact with other people in your life, because you've seen it in movies and TV. So it messes up, or at least influences, what you expect when you meet somebody.
Yeah.
Sure. You're like, oh, you're a female, you become my best friend. That means someday we're going to get married. Which,
Yeah.
you know, isn't going to be the case and shouldn't be the case, you know?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
I didn't think
interesting.
about that.
And you're diving deep into some stuff.
Super
Yeah.
deep.
If
Well,
I
not
had
even
done,
that. Like another thing, if we're not looking at the romantic as male female, even two males, their friendship. In most movies where there is a best friendship, they always at the middle. What is it? Act 2. There's always a breakup between them two, and you have to figure out, well, how am I going to get back together with my best friend, or how are the best friends going to get back together? Who's gonna be the bigger person in the situation?
Yeah.
that's always the case. Yeah.
We're in the deep end. We're swimming in the ocean with sharks. I mean, this is like Jaws and his best friend relationship with Quinn. It's a whole thing, man.
That's
I can tell you anybody are best friends, but that's a different podcast.
But
that was a
I
stretch. I like it.
rather than all that, like all the toxic type of stuff, I want to go.
Oh.
I want to talk about a friendship that there really is no toxicity. To be honest with you, it's friendship from beginning to really the end for one of them.
Okay.
Goose and Maverick from Top Gun.
Okay.
Those guys, here's the thing, they're best friends, but they have to be best friends because to work seamlessly together in life and death situations, I mean, you have to trust that person completely because they're getting into dogfights. They're going against an enemy. I don't know, it's a best friend, and the only thing that brings the best friends apart, those two people apart, is death.
Spoiler.
Spoiler for a movie 1980. What is it? 1985.
Or whatever year that was. But yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting point that they were. You think about a lot of friendships that happen in like war movies. Yeah, it's the same idea. You're kind of pitted together. You have to survive together. You don't have time to sit there and argue and bicker. Sometimes you just have to trust each other and follow each other's lead. You know.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, that's a good point.
In a way, I guess you could almost call that like a brother type of love, like a bro love,
A bromance.
Like Pacific Rim, where they have to be in the stupid thing and work together.
But even in Pacific Rim, they have to work towards becoming a best friend.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they can't get along with the other person, and when they don't, people die.
Yeah, high stakes. That's a high stakes relationship right there. That's for sure.
It's also the shared traumatic experiences creates friendships where people think that just because you both did something horrible, you are friends. It doesn't work. Like, you know, if you were both in a plane crash, you're not just friends because you both experienced it.
No, that's true. And they try to shove that on you in film.
Yeah, and try to force it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we both watched this horrible thing together. Let's be best friends now. It's like, no, I mean, you can talk about it, sure, but I don't think we're going to become best friends. I think it's deeper than that. And I think it's easier on, say, a TV show than a movie because you have more time with those characters to do that, which is why I'm going to be mentioning Corey and Sean here from Boy Meets World. You had several seasons, many seasons, to develop that relationship, so it wasn't just pigeonholed into one type of stereotype.
And their friendship was a roller coaster as well. They went through spats of not being best friends and having to figure out how they're going to work their friendship back together.
Right.
But hey, in 30 minutes, they always do.
Not always.
No,
there
that's
were
true.
a few episodes where they kind of went their own way. But what was interesting about Boy Meets World and this relationship, for me at least, was that it was very similar to the relationship that I had with my best friend as a little kid. Both very different kind of backgrounds and upbringings. a lot of differences in our personalities, and yet we were best friends for whatever reason. We got along together and we did things. And sometimes it's the opposite. The opposite attracts, right? You're like really interested in that person for their attributes. And I think that's what these two had. I think, you had Sean, who was, he really liked who Corey was and his family were as people, because he didn't have the loving, home life. And then and for Corey, he liked it that Sean was this cool, badass kind of guy and, wanted that. So I think that's what kind of brought them together. It's a little more dynamic when you have a friendship like that. And for me, I said, like, I really identified with that in my own life too.
That's fantastic.
But I'm going to touch more on that later. So, yeah.
Your friend must have been the Sean Hunter of the group, the good-looking
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's fired.
Sean Hunter.
Thanks for being my
Wow.
friend.
Thanks. Yeah, call me later. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the kind of the end of their relationship later as they progress, because I kind of want to talk about some other stuff as well. But that was one of the relationships and friendships I wanted to talk about on today's podcast, because I think it is one of the more dynamic ones. And to Trevor's point, it wasn't like this, like, oh, just for convenience sake or whatever. It's really it really delved into what makes a best friend and what makes a relationship. So if you haven't watched it,
great.
watch it. It's on Disney Plus. It's a great series.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. I like to watch it even from the first season when they're little kids. It just brings me back to being a little kid myself.
Yeah, it's a fun show. Really good. But anyone else have any examples that maybe is a bad example or a good example?
I think we kind of hit on a little bit about how people try to figure out who isn't actually best friend. So I know my example would be How I Met Your Mother. You always had the conflict between Ted, Marshall, and Barney to figure out who's best friend.
That's fantastic because they
forgot
do
about that
That's
triangle.
throughout the entire series is how Barney thinks that he's Ted's best friend throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the thing you said. You see it through the whole show is that they have those spats, but then Ted or even Marshall kind of goes back to how each of them have met, and then you see where it's actually at. But Barney's always that person that tries to wedge between the two of them to kind of make himself each of theirs best friend. So I mean, I love, like I said, the relationship between all five of them, but I mean, especially Ted and Marshall, how they've pretty much they're the whole show, how it got started with them.
Well, and that's like a best friend that like you want for yourself. Like you want that type of best friend where you can just pretty much, do what, say anything to, like that's the ultimate best friend. They were the ultimate best friends in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like any of us, either through school, like, well, for instance, they met in college. So they've had that friendship since they've met in college up until at least for the episode, until they got married. All of them, they got married. So it's kind of it's, how could you say, it's relevant to some people that have made those friends. I know, like for me, I have a best friend. I don't see him all the time that I met in college, but we keep in contact all the time. So you kind of I guess you could say you have different, and then it's a different example as well. You have different best friends to where, like, okay, this guy's my best friend from college, my best friend from high school.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Different time periods in your life. Yeah.
For sure.
But I also like what you said, where you're like, they're competing, and that brings us back to Trevor's point. Like, what if the other person doesn't realize they aren't their best friend? Are they still best friends? If one is like, oh, I never really considered you my best friend, but you did. Interesting. Is it legitimately a best friendship?
So, yeah, that kind of goes into my relationship. So I went with BoJack Horseman, the show, because BoJack has the most interesting relationships with other characters. The one in particular is Todd. As they go through the seasons, Todd starts out as someone who sleeps on BoJack's couch. That is literally all that he is. And then it turns out, once we get to the end of season 2, they throw out the term best friend, where Todd views BoJack as his best friend, but BoJack never really considered it. But then he uses the term best friend to almost take advantage of Todd, to like throw it out there, and like, because that's how BoJack is. He takes advantage of everybody in his life. And so Todd's just the version of that. And it's interesting because BoJack doesn't really have friends. He doesn't really have any other friends. So the one person he actually lives with, he latches on once he like figures out what he's doing to this is my best friend. But by then he's already done such horrible things to Todd. He doesn't reciprocate it back. But they've gone through so much together over like however many seasons. It's a really interesting dynamic of taking advantage of people and not being at the same time. You know, there's always like that mistiming thing of being, especially in relationship, but it also works in just pure friendships where you view somebody like that, they don't see you like that, and then once you're ready, they're already moved on to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, you see that like in movies and shows in regards to a guy is a best friend with this girl, and he falls in love with her, but she doesn't feel the same way about it. You know, it's the same kind of example with, like you say, with BoJack, is that
it's a whole
almost like
crutch thing.
Yeah, it's like you're almost keeping them around because like, oh, the end result of this relationship is going to be that other relationship, that romantic relationship.
Just what you could do for me, that's all I want.
And that too, yeah. Anything.
I need this from you at this moment. And because it's also, it depends on the individual characters. Like Todd is super naive and he's easy to be taken advantage of because he'll look at the best in people. BoJack always looks at the worst in people and always specifically is looking, because he's such a dark pit of despair, he views everyone else as they have to have some ulterior motive to even be connected with him. So it's also how open each individual is to any type of relationships.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah, wow, that makes that show a lot more deeper. Even though, I mean, it's
the show is super deep.
No, the show is definitely deep, but yeah, I mean, to look at it like that, because when you look at Todd, he is kind of like, he's kind of an idiot. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of the, I don't, cliche, but comic relief out of the show.
He season 1, he's comic relief, and they finally figure out they can use him to show what an ass BoJack is over and over again.
Right. Interesting. Wow. Anyways.
Well, what about your examples there, Alex?
Well, I actually...
Okay.
Sorry. No, go ahead, please.
Well, no, you did Maverick and Goose. We all did one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you did.
That's all.
I'm sorry.
I mean, if you have more, about Maverick and Goose.
Well, if I had to do another, I always, when I think of best friends, you do kind of go back to your high school days of when you're a kid and when you're kind of dumb and naive, whatever, and you have your friends just because you just so happen to live near them, type of thing. And It makes me think of movies like Superbad or Booksmart. I actually just watched Booksmart this week, and it's an absolute ripoff of Superbad in all the worst ways. It's not even funny.
Really?
I did not care for the movie at all.
The Olivia Wilde directed movie that was like the greatest coming of age story in the history of time.
Thank you for saying all of that, because
I've never seen it. That's all. I've only ever heard that perspective of it.
Like, me too. Watching it, I felt like it was just about frame by frame Superbad with females. Wow. Like, they have their moment where they break up, but then they get back together because there's a huge ordeal that happens that they find out that they need each other, type of thing. And that's the thing, is being like the best friends, these high school kids find that they're so dependent on each other. Like, I had moments when I was a kid where I had a friend who was trying to get into the same college as me, even though he wasn't even interested in film and video production, but he was so, in a way, dependent on our friendship.
Be with you.
Yeah.
Alex is the popular kid. You got to hang with him.
Oh, not in high school. Not in high school. Oh my God.
No, not in high school, huh? All right.
Oh, jeopardize my future just to go to school with you. Just to be around you.
Holy cow.
Alex, that was quite a relationship.
Well, no, but that's the thing is, I mean, but that's the thing. We were friends because of the proximity that we were to each other. He was the only other kid on the block. So we were automatically like best friends. We hung out every day.
Yeah,
type of thing. You know what I mean?
With my best friend growing up,
proximity
next door.
That's probably, I'm just friends with you because I have nobody else to hang out with. So
right. Honestly,
when he's sitting there listening to like No Limit Soldiers and Master P, and I'm going, have you heard that Queen album? That Queen Greatest Hits? Oh, it's fantastic.
I've had that relationship, yeah.
I like this conversation so far.
But I think in high school it's a little different because you're more like put into groups almost. It's like, oh my God, I'm in high school. Where am I fitting now? It's like, okay, who am I going to be with? And you're kind of stuck with whatever that group is, and you find your kind of your best friend or best friends in that group,
Well, and that's funny
which
too,
sucks.
because you can find like the high school kids, they have that dynamic, yeah, where they've got their groups, and then you kind of feel like you latch on to either one or multiple people in that group, where you're like, oh my god, this is my best friend till the end type of thing.
Yes.
But then you learn more and more about them after. Like Cobra Kai is a great example, where the popular girls, like the mean girls in school, one of them kind of realizes, wow, this girl sucks, but they were best friends for like ever. And then they end up, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the show, just because, I mean, it's season 2 is fairly still fresh for a lot of people. So watch Cobra Kai.
Yeah,
It's
right.
actually, the best friend dynamic jumps around a lot in Cobra Kai, which is kind of interesting how they kind of present it and how they do it, and how a lot of the friends break up. And then they have to find out, oh, again, they need each other.
Right. Well, yeah, but people do change. I think they show that in
Right.
some films and TV shows too. It's like you get older and maybe your tastes have changed. Maybe you latched on to those people, those groups, because you were scared that you wouldn't fit in. You're like, oh God, I will try my best to fit in then with whatever group it happens to be, right? And then as you grow older, you're like, okay, I'm not going to be with them. Yeah, there you go.
Think of all the supposed great friends they are when they're little. And we see in it too that they don't even associate with one another.
Not at all. That's life. I mean, like, I have a lot of friends that, like, I know them. They're on my Facebook, but have I talked to them in like 20 years? No. Like, I may say happy birthday to
Facebook,
them,
the graveyard of your best friends.
It is. Oh, yeah. It's like, oh God, you just walk by each tombstone and go, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember that party. Yeah, that trip. That time we went to Taco Bell and we barfed in the back of your car. Yeah, I remember that. Like, that's what you do, right? But then you get older and you're like, okay, your tastes change. And what a cool thing about Corey and Sean's relationship in Boy Meets World is eventually, once Corey marries Topanga, he's like, no, she's your best friend. I'm not your best friend anymore. And what that did for him is it kind of released him from that need to be like Corey, and he ended up being his own person and became a writer and like actually grew as a human being. It's really interesting.
Wow.
Because I think that happens a lot in life. Like, you grow up, and if you get married, you're usually marrying your best friend. That person is your best friend, and the other friends you have are usually like your neighbors that you go over to have a barbecue with. It's not usually a best friend's house, or maybe you have like a best friend group or something. But I think for a lot of people, their life partner becomes their best friend.
Guys, I got to go inside and tell my wife that I love her.
You should. I love you. You're my best friend. So, anyways.
But that's actually really cool. That's cool that you brought that up, because, yeah, I mean, your best friend that you have known as your best friend for so long, through high school, through thick and thin, it all does kind of fizzle. I don't want to say if it's going to fizzle away, but once you do get married, you're essentially marrying another best friend.
And it will never be the same.
And your best friend will never be, exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just more time commitments and changes.
It all goes to say that once you start maturing and growing up, your interests become different than the person that you grew up with. And so
for sure,
those things that, I mean, they may go to a different school, they may work at a different job as they get older, so they're surrounded with different people for a long period of time through their day than they are with you. So it starts slowly fading out to where, oh yeah, I want to hang out with you, I want to contact you, because you're just caught up in a different experience with different people.
Yeah, and think of like all the different movies and TV shows where, like, in the epilogue they say, oh, and now so and so is a lawyer in New York, and I haven't seen him since whatever grade. And like, they always have like those moments where they talk about how the friends that they had. Like, you look at Stand By Me, which is a great example of friendship. Like, a lot of them kind of just all went off in their different ways after that summer.
Yeah.
Like, that was a summer of like the relationship was awesome, but you know what? You grow up and you go different ways, and sometimes that's okay. You don't have to be the best friend for life. You have a best friend for a while, and
for that moment.
Really, and it's worth it for that moment, because like there's that moment in Stand By Me where was it Gordy and Chris, they had that bond moment where Chris just breaks down about his life and how horrible it is and how much he hates himself. And it's just like, and he had he had his best friend there to be the shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what he needed. He didn't necessarily need him for much more after that. So that was kind of an interesting way of framing a best friendship, I guess, but not necessarily having it to last forever.
Yeah, no,
Well, and that's interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I was
Josh.
gonna say, I like how you mentions that because that's kind of what best friends usually you get multiple best friends in life because, like Prague is saying though, those people are there at that moment in time to help each other out to kind of get through situations or.
And it doesn't have to be a
periods of
sad
their life.
situation either.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of like say with school. I'm using school so many times. To get through that, or you go to camp and you make a best friend there. They're your camp.
Oh, like band camp, yes.
Yeah.
Band camp, yes.
That one time at band camp. Oh, that girl that played the flute was great.
Yeah, you just become dependent on each other to kind of get through an experience with just for that time period, and then after that, y'all may go your separate ways after.
Right.
Well, and the perfect example of that, I know that you used Stand By Me, which was great, but like Breakfast Club as well.
Oh, same idea.
They all started off as being total strangers. I mean, they knew each other through a distance, through seeing in the hallway, knowing that he's the nerdy kid, he's the bad kid, she's the princess, whatever. And then they all kind of get together in this one Saturday. And I mean, who knows if they even talk to each other again.
Right.
Just wait for the sequel.
No thanks. No thanks.
They're going to remake that movie eventually one day.
Yeah, they've already done enough kind of homages to it. But yeah, but that's another point of like that limited time of being the best friend. It's like they really kind of had that one Saturday detention where they kind of became the best friends for that moment.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then there's one friendship that defies all proximity and length of time, and it doesn't matter about any of that.
Was it what?
SpongeBob and Patrick.
Oh boy.
You know why? It's because they're both naive to begin with. They both don't need all these traumatic experiences or shared experiences. They're just both have the same experiences, and they don't need anything else. They're not constantly looking to the horizon like so many other people in different relations. What about this person? What about that person?
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, they don't have like a need.
And it's like it's a purity to their friendship. It cuts away all the stuff that we've been talking about and that could be like detractors from friendships.
Now, is Gary a pet or a friend?
He's a friend.
See?
Gary.
Squidward's his friend too.
Of course he is. No, I like that. That's a good example of like a friendship like that, where it isn't something that has to be like shared trauma or thing into like a niche.
And they have points where, I'm not talking to you for a while, and bad things happen, but they always come back to one another.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes you do, like when I was a little kid, I fought with my best friend. I mean, physically fought. Where we would punch each other and stuff and drag each other to the ground, and then 15 minutes later, so are you gonna play some Nintendo?
You want to play some Tony Hawk?
Right? It's like, all right.
Hey, you've got the Nintendo 64 at your house. Can I come over?
I'll go there. This was pre N64, like pre.
Oh,
so like,
can I come over and play the Atari?
There you go.
I know that you've got Adventure.
Adventure, Pitfall. Okay.
But so you were talking about Squidward and SpongeBob, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm trying to think of another friendship that would be something like that. Something where they're friends no matter what.
You mean
like
like Shaggy?
What did I say?
You said Squidward.
Squidward? Oh,
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
He's a jerk.
It doesn't matter.
The only other friendship that I could think of is like, this is gonna sound dumb, Han Solo and Chewbacca.
It's a friendship.
They never really get in. No, they're absolutely a friendship. I mean, the tears or the roar or whatever that Chewbacca gives in a moment. God, I don't want to spoil anything for dumb people who haven't seen the movie.
I mean, Han is more Chewie's pet than anything. I would say Han's closer to Gary in the SpongeBob scenario.
Okay.
Because Chewie has so many different pets.
That's true.
He's had human pets through his whole life. No, that's Yoda. He's only about 250.
I'm gonna look this up. Please continue.
I do know Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm going to say, you don't want to look things up against Trevor's knowledge of Star Wars
You
here.
should have mentioned. You should have not.
He's the
mentioned
Rain
Star
Man of
Wars.
movies. Do you not know this?
Oh wow, you are super right.
Anyways, yes.
Step
But you're right.
So you're looking at it more like a pet, but here's the thing: pets are best friends.
Oh, there it is.
From
Pet
whose
is the best
perspective, though? That gets into a whole tough dynamic because the dog
wow.
doesn't know any better.
Right. The dog thinks like, oh, you feed me. This is great. I'm going to love you.
The dog will, because dogs, it's what humans don't have, where it's the unconditional love. And that's
Yeah.
why
Yep.
it's really like when I think of like super best friends, you'd have to take a human out of the equation. It would have to be like Milo and Otis, where both are animals. And so they rely on each other 100% completely. And there's no taking advantage either way, or I need you to do this something for me, or remember when I did this for you way back then and now you owe me one. There's never of anything like that because they're animals. They don't think of stupid things that humans do that make everything so
Yes.
complex.
Yep. Good point. I like it.
Man, yeah.
That's the pet in person dynamic. People ruin it. See, Chewbacca,
yeah,
I would
true.
give it to you, but Han would then just ruin it because he's a human.
Yeah. 'Cause he would need him to do something for him or whatever.
Yeah, the whole life debt
Yeah.
thing, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, especially if Chewbacca is his 234 years old. I mean, yeah, you're right. He's gone through a couple humans at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird to think about
A little bit.
that.
Well, I think of a good example that kind of a friend that takes advantage of their best friend, which is Ferris Bueller and
Oh
Cameron.
my God. Yeah, he does.
So,
But- You
but
could say he helped him out.
He helped
In a
him out.
way.
He got him kind of out of his funk in a way, right?
But yes, I do know what you're saying. He really was using them to kind of have his day off, right?
yeah, I mean, ignoring that the fact that he was sick to force him to say, "Hey, I need you to do all this so I could have a good day
Yes.
off." You know, and it kind of it's a testament to kind of like just people that go through those type of relationships is that you have this one friend that sees and views your friendship totally different than you may have seen it. So,
Right. He needs you to be that or he or she needs you to be that person to like go along with them. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if you don't do it, then maybe it's not right or whatever. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
please come do this with
Guilt
me to
trip
validate.
friendships where you
It
say
is.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Ferris Bueller is. And that whole scene was like arguing with Cameron in the kitchen, like, you gotta do this. Come on, Cameron, you gotta do this.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know,
and it always
it's-
goes back to like saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, but can you do this one more time?" It's like
Right.
multiple times of going through that same situation over and over again. But yeah,
Mhm. So just one last time. Just
just
one last time, man.
Yeah, that
Always,
gets
right?
into the whole of who needs the friendship, and some people will
Uh-huh.
be more willing to, give in to various kinds of requests and demands to keep that friendship going, and the other person wouldn't view you as a best friend. It's more just like a means to an end, and so the other person is like completely dependent on your existence, and the other person's like, I don't really care if you live or die, but you do have purpose now because you're so gullible. You'll believe the stuff that I'm feeding you. And so that
Yeah.
there's a value in that type of friendship too, though, because the person understands how needy they are, but they offer something just because you wouldn't get that from somebody who has any kind of self-respect.
Right?
Yeah.
Get no respect.
Nice.
So
I'm
like
old.
it's a bad perspective on a best friendship, but it still is a type of best friendship. Like
It is.
it's a
yeah.
negative way to do it, but if you still find a value in that service, you can still view it as a best friend because you couldn't find anyone else you can take advantage of in the same way.
Yep,
Exactly.
pretty much.
It's super dark.
It is.
like I said, there's just so many examples of best friends, and how like I said, it always depends on one person believing that's their best friend, and that's how it
It
usually
just
goes.
takes one person. Both
Yeah.
people don't have to believe there's a best friendship for a best friendship to occur.
There you go. Well, what about one of the relationships I wanted to bring up is a little bit different, especially if you've read the books, The Lord of the Rings, is Frodo and Sam, because Sam is his gardener, so technically that's like his boss, his employer. You know, he just was like admired him, Not much was really discussed about their friendship in the books at all. It's just whatever you were told throughout the story, and it almost becomes like that whole wartime thing, right? You're stuck together. You kind of have to have, some kind of bond. But really, in my opinion, the way the characters are written is that this was a best friendship. This went beyond that, employer-employee kind of thing. Where I think that there were some boundaries that were crossed, and I think that they became best friends at the end. But I'm sure that's up for debate for some
Well,
people.
and
I don't think he's a sidekick. I know that we had that discussion before, and I think he's not a sidekick. I think he's his best friend by the end.
it's interesting that their
From Sam's
friendship.
perspective.
Yes, true. I don't know about Frodo's
Yeah.
because he is the employer, so you might just be like, I'm really glad this guy came along and carried me up this mountain.
I've been
finish
out
the
of
job.
it for like days or something. I have no
Right?
idea what's even going on.
So glad I brought the gardener along. This is great.
I'm on like
But
some
even-
version of an acid trip, just it's ring based.
Even when Frodo was going to kill Sam pretty much tells him, "I'm yours. I'm your Sam."
Right. But yeah,
Like that-
was it reciprocated at? Yeah, I don't know.
Right. I mean, Frodo was on the verge of killing him.
I mean, it was more the ring taking over, but sure. Yeah.
Well,
Interesting
yeah.
relationship for sure.
But it's interesting that they actually bonded far more than even having. They had the brothers with them the entire time as well.
Oh, Merry and Pippin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for
there
a little
was.
while.
It kind of gets into that idea of a forced best friendship where you don't
Right.
have another choice. Like you can
Yeah.
be best friends and rely on each other like your brothers, and you would lay down your life for them. But
Or
if you don't,
fight
you're
the
by
whole time,
yourself.
right?
Yeah, I'm
Pretty much.
solo, and so that's a whole different interesting dynamic.
Wow. Forced friendships.
Forced.
I like it. I mean, if you think about it, then maybe that's what the Breakfast Club was in a way. They're kind of forced to be together all Saturday. What else are you going to do? I guess we'll become
I mean,
friends.
they had to. I mean, if they wanted to socialize at all, and they were all pretty social people, so yeah, they kind of had to. I don't know. It's interesting.
Forced friendships, or there's also fate-based friendships because the author has a particular, like they create their own fate rather than just the randomness. But like Harry Potter, there's no reason for Harry and Ron to become best friends other than she writes it like that. There's no, like, Ron really doesn't offer anything at all other than being super loyal. That's literally loyalty. Like if you had an attribute chart and you were going into battle, all he would have is loyalty on pros.
It's like-
Ron has
he's like
nothing else at all.
He's like Samwise Gamgee to Frodo.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yeah.
He's the
Again,
Samwise
yeah,
in the
it's-
relationship.
So that's a weird best friendship too, because then we see the whole progress because there's an epilogue and Ron has a new best friend who's Hermione, and
Right.
Harry and Hermione never build that best friend relationship, even though really they are. They're the ones who become most best friends because they actually rely on each other through so much. It's the whole kind of experience friendships because Ron never
is,
gets to that
yeah.
point of Harry needing Ron the way he needs Hermione.
Well, what's interesting too is their relationship starts the way a lot of friendships do, is that they were in the same car together, right? The same, room in the car, in the train up to Hogwarts. So it's like, oh, you're the first person I met, therefore you're going to be my best friend. I did the same thing in high school. I
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
line to get my books, and the person in front of me, we talked the whole time, so we had to wait for like an hour or two. Oh, cool, we're best friends now. We both like Star Wars. Okay, and that was it. Like sometimes
Yeah.
that just happens. And
Yeah.
it ends up that it's not necessarily the best relationship, the best person to be with. I think sometimes you're just like, oh God, I'm in this new place, this new school, whatever. I'm just going to latch on to the first person that says hi to me. Like, cool, he said hi to me. Let's be best friends. And I really do think that's part of what happened with their relationship. They're both these like kind of outcasts. Ron came from a not well-to-do family, and Harry was locked in a cupboard for his whole childhood. It's like, yeah, man, I think they're just clinging to whatever they could. Yeah.
Indian
Good
in the
point.
cupboard. Great
Yes.
movie. I don't know why that popped into my head.
Different relationship, but yeah.
Well, a boy and his toy. Look
Sure.
at
Andy and Woody.
Toy Story.
Look at Woody.
When
I
you
mean,
said
you
boy
would-
and his toy, I thought of like the Velveteen Rabbit or something. Okay,
I was totally thinking of something else altogether, but sure.
Oh,
we'll go with Buzz and Woody.
of course.
Well, I wasn't going to say even Buzz. If you look at it, Woody, that's one of
That's
those
original.
friendships. His original best friend was the boy, was Andy.
Andy's favorite toy was his Woody.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh.
No, I know. That's what I was getting at the beginning. Yeah.
ruining Toy Story for
Yep.
everyone now.
Oh, come
That's
on.
what
The
Toy
Woody jokes
Story's
have been
based on.
around forever.
I
Yep.
know. I know. Just in case people haven't heard that one.
Oh, there you go.
But with Andy becoming more moving on from Woody, Woody almost had to. I mean, he found a new best friend with
A
Buzz.
secondary best friend.
A secondary best friend.
Huh.
I'm a Buzz fan.
Wow.
Ah.
It took so long to get to that.
Wow, there you go. We did though.
Good night, ladies and
Awesome.
gentlemen.
Roll credits.
Wow. Buzz is a secondary best friend.
Yeah, because he needed
Good.
somebody to latch onto.
Right. And it was cool.
Because he
too,
just
because,
takes
like,
advantage of
Wizards-
Rex and he takes advantage of Slinky. He pretty
Yeah,
much just Woody takes advantage of all the other toys and just uses them for his own purposes.
For the most part, yeah.
Woody's kind of a prick.
Yeah.
If you've watched
Wow.
the behind the scenes of the original script of Toy Story, Woody was the villain.
Is he like John Lasseter? Sorry, huh?
But no, I've not seen it behind the scenes.
Check it out. It's actually pretty interesting. I believe that there's something on Disney Plus about it that they screened it and people just hated it. Because Tom Hanks, everybody loves Tom Hanks, but you're looking at him as a bad guy now.
Right.
So, but we're not talking about behind the scenes stuff. We're talking about best friends.
Well, it was a good little segue there for a minute. That's fine.
Yeah, for a second.
All right. Cool. So let's think then maybe secondary best friends. Are there any others that you can think of that were like that? So I like that idea. Of like,
Well, I was just actually thinking of another dependent friendship. Another
Mhm.
dependent, like Elliot and E.T. I mean,
Okay.
by the time they become best friends, they're so connected that they need each other.
like
when
they actually
one's-
need each other. Physically,
Yes,
they
when,
need each other.
physically, when one starts dying, the other one starts dying. So
Wow.
that's a friendship that's above a lot right there.
Yeah.
It gets into the symbiote idea of
Yeah,
Venom
that's
and
true.
Venom and Eddie Brock. I mean,
Eddie
he hates Venom, but they're dependent upon each other. But he almost he understands Venom's thirst and desire by the end of the film, or even in the comic series. Like he mind melds with him enough that it's a really sadistic friendship. But Eddie's all in on what Venom's doing.
And that is what happens with E.T. and Elliot too. They mind
Yeah,
meld
that's why
with
it
each
was
other.
a
Yeah.
continuation.
Wow.
Well, with Venom as well,
Huh.
him and Eddie Brock, they both shared the same hatred for Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire. So,
Yes, Tobey
That's the
Maguire
Venom we're talking
specifically.
about.
I couldn't. I'm
We're
trying
talking
to
about
think of
Topher Grace.
Wow.
Peter Parker. You know what? I'm gonna go back to sleep, guys. Sorry.
Okay. I'm okay with this. This is great.
Alex
I
just
love
likes
it.
to bring up Tobey Maguire whenever he can.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Any
fine.
chance.
I can't wait for him to be in the new Spider-Man movies.
Spider-Verse.
He
Spider-Verse.
will be. Yep,
Into the
eventually.
Toby.
Into the Toby.
Oh, I hope they bring Sam Wise into that one too. Oh wait, no, that's not Tobey Maguire. Never mind.
That's an interesting.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know what crossover that is.
Well, now I feel like an idiot.
I'm like, I'm not sure I watched the movies correctly.
That's a deep cut.
Like-
It was behind the scenes.
Was Elisha Wood ever in anything? I know.
Elijah Wood. Back to the Future 2. That's
Okay. Sure. Let's stick with that. Wait, are Marty and Doc best friends?
I was actually going to bring that up. They're unique best friends because Marty was actually employed by Doc. Like they had an employer-employee type of relationship that became a best friend.
What
type of
what
relationship.
did Marty do for Doc?
he was kind of like a helper around his work. So I read the series, and in the
Okay. So,
comic
like,
series,
I don't remember this from the book.
yeah,
I
no,
just thought like he liked young boys or something. I was like, I don't know what's
oh
going on with
God,
this weird
come
old man,
on.
but sure.
No, in the comic
Ooh.
series,
Sorry, I'm like, I never knew. It was always kind of awkward. I'm like,
well, no, of course, and that's the thing is people are looking back at it, going, well, why is this older man hanging out with this 16-year-old boy? It's kind of strange. But if you do read the comic series, you find out that everybody looked at Doc Brown as this kooky, weird scientist that nobody should be talking to. But Marty needed to steal something for Flea. Who was Flea? Needles.
Needles. I forgot about
Needles,
needles.
yeah. So he went to Doc Brown's place to steal something, and he was clever enough to get through the kind of, not maze, but in a way like booby trap. He didn't booby trap it, but
Okay.
he was clever enough to find out how to get into Doc's lab. And Doc actually put an ad in like Craigslist or the newspaper back in the 80s.
I like Craigslist, and
Oh,
that's some
in the
weird
80s,
Back to the Future thing.
That pretty much was
Weird,
saying,
yeah.
hey, I'm looking for a helper. I'm looking for someone to help me
Okay.
around here.
Companion.
And so he, in a way, Marty passed all of the tests to become his helper. And Doc finds out that he was actually there to steal from him, but they end up talking through it, and he becomes his worker for a few years, and through the few years, they end up becoming best friends. So,
All right.
and they really are best friends. They travel through time, and I mean, Doc saves Marty's life, and Marty saves Doc's life. It's
Do
know.
life debts constitute best friendship?
But I don't think that they were in any kind of debt, though. I think they were doing it because they cared about each other enough to do that.
Marty, I came
You know?
through time for you.
Well, I mean, you got the bulletproof vest, or you've got the Marty getting hanged in number 3 and being saved. Everybody, they're back and forth saving each other because they care about each other enough.
Well, to take that relationship darker, there's
Oh,
Rick and
no.
Morty.
Oh.
Where they're the stuff they go with together by season 3, even season 2, episode 2, like they're both just done. But Rick has a greater appreciation for Morty. Like in episode 1 of season 1, Morty is nothing but a vessel of stupidity. But as they go on, he actually, I think, cares for Morty, and they have so many shared horrible experiences that they kind of can level out that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
That
he's
brings up a
willing
point,
to let Morty die and just bring a Morty from a different universe to replace him.
But that was in
Yeah.
the earlier seasons, I
Yeah,
think.
he finally he goes and saves Morty that time that all those fracturing of the premiere of season 2, it starts splintering the universe, and he actually goes and saves his particular Morty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then that brings up the best friend relationship between relatives too. That can happen.
We
That's
didn't
in the
even
films.
get to that.
Yeah.
Like Marty and his dad, or Marty and his mom.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Talking about Back to the Future.
No, but they're not best
Friendships,
friends.
relative friendships.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call that a best friendship.
I don't know, man. You give
he's
Marty
not-
more time hanging with his dad. His dad was pretty dependent on Marty.
He was very dependent. On Marty,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
His mom wanted to sleep with him, which was a little.
If Marty was there longer, say a couple
Oh,
years, they
Calvin.
might have become better friends.
You never know.
Well, he would have
happen.
made him a lot more confident, that's for sure. But even in the week that Marty was there, he made him confident enough to punch Biff. But he didn't seem to care enough when Marty disappears for the next 30 years. Because he got with Lorraine.
No,
Lorraine
True. Yeah.
became the new best friend. So
Yep, that's what happens. New best friends
Anyway.
replace the old ones.
wow, ooh, I like how we just jumped around in there, man. That was fun.
Well, there's just one other one I wanted to mention. We didn't talk about Marvel in any respect. Do you think Cap and Iron Man are best friends by the time Endgame ends?
I don't think so.
No,
I think it's more of
so.
mutual respect for each other. I think they
Right.
just have that mutual respect. I don't think I would see them hanging out together and like I'd be like, hey, let's go like hang out and sit by the lake and talk about stuff. Like I don't see them doing that.
That's true. Because I think Tony Stark would be his best friend. Would be more of maybe Happy than anybody else.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, because he takes advantage of Happy, and Happy's gullible enough to follow along.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's because
You
that's
got
what
it.
Tony needs in a best friend. See,
Yes.
you need the character needs to know their personality type and what kind of best. Like Tony couldn't be friends with someone who was on his level.
No, we could not.
It
There's
wouldn't
no way.
work.
Nope. Exactly.
His best friend's Jarvis.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess so, because he does depend on him.
and then it becomes
Jarvis comes
Vision.
alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even though he married Gwyneth Paltrow, they are definitely not best friends. I don't
there's
think anybody
nothing
could
there.
be.
No,
Oh, wow.
that fire died before it started.
Was she even in the last movie? I don't know.
Yeah, she
Was she
shows up
even
in the
in
blue
the
suit.
last movie? Yeah, she. Gwyneth Paltrow claims she doesn't remember filming much. Of
Oh,
that
yeah.
movie, but yeah. So, anyways.
And then, do you
Yeah.
think Cap is best friends with Sam or Bucky?
Or neither or both. Once again, I wonder if it comes back to like he was probably best friends with Bucky back in the day, but I think now it's different, because everything they had to go through. I think it's more just that mutual respect thing. It's like cool. We're cool.
Now that
I
he
don't
actually
know.
went back and lived his life, I mean, maybe that could have changed.
Oh, that's
Oh yeah,
true,
then Peggy
too.
becomes his best friend.
Yeah. Dang.
Now, does
And he-
Peggy survive?
I would assume
Yeah.
so, because she did in the original timeline. So why would
Yeah, she lives the whole
she-
timeline. She just dies
Oh,
of old age
okay.
without
She
Cap.
dies of old age, yeah, at the end.
Man,
Yeah,
It's
you forget
interesting
that
though.
he went through
He goes back and he completely forgets that Bucky exists. That's how much he becomes best friends with Peggy.
Sam.
Because
Or
when
Peggy,
he's
okay.
back in the 1940s, he could have went and known that Bucky's being held captive in Russia for like all these years being brainwashed. He could have done something about that. But
whoa.
the new best friendship, it makes all those old best friendships fall by the wayside. I think that's the ultimate takeaway from this episode.
I think we're finding some plot holes.
Well, that's all Endgame is.
Yeah.
That's what
pretty
time
much.
travel is.
So there's time travel and fix that for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta be
Well.
careful with time travel.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Science ruined time travel for me anyways, so whatever.
It'll do that. Yeah.
Damn you,
Science.
science. Science and astrology.
Oh,
Not
Anyways.
astrology.
Well, in a way, it's
Astrology shouldn't
Oh,
base
God,
anything on
no!
anything.
Let me fall asleep, people. Let this
just
end.
one.
I think Alex is tapping out for
Yeah.
this episode.
I don't think it's gonna end for a number of years, Alex. I'm afraid.
I've got 18 years of this.
Hopefully not the whole 18.
Her
Oh,
crying
God.
becomes more visceral the older she gets.
Yeah, it's more screaming,
Would that make you love me, Dad?
right?
Oh,
Good luck
man.
with that. Don't worry, she'll become your best friend too.
Oh,
I hope so.
we
man.
didn't talk about father-daughter best friendships.
Father-daughter or
I guess
father-son?
we'll need a
or-
sequel for this episode.
might.
Jeez.
Alex
We
and his
might.
daughter, there you go. That's
We've
it.
got a lot of sequels that we're talking about doing.
Talking
Okay.
about it. It'll happen eventually. We'll get there.
We got time.
Don't worry.
Well,
Yeah.
be sure to follow at Secondary Heroes on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Anchor. Leave us a voice message. Listen to our podcast. Watch us over
Yes.
on YouTube. Do every possible thing related to Secondary Heroes. Please.
Please.
Leave us a review on iTunes. It's free for you. It's priceless to us. I think this is everything for episode 77. To everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed. We'll talk to you next time.
Prog out.
Shout out to my best friend, Jimmy. That's my clickbait of the week.
Who's Jimmy?